Thank you so much for coming out in this cold, somewhat blustery evening. We are very happy you guys came. My name is Nan Quinlan. I'm a member of the South County Hospital, South County Hospital Committee. I'm also a resident of South County, and I know very well of the many services, wonderful services, that our hospital provides. A little housekeeping before we go on. Our exits, as you can see, are clearly lit. Our bathrooms, men and women, are just outside the door. The one thing that we're going to ask of you tonight is this. We have 10 speakers, 10 very elegant, they're elegant, eloquent too, speakers who will give you some great in-depth inside information about what is happening at the hospital. And so to have enough time for all these speakers to speak and get you home before the sun rises, we've given them about 10-12 minutes to speak. But it's not enough time, sorry, but it's not enough time after each speaker to ask if there are any questions. So what we decided to do instead, at the end of the program, the speakers, the experts will come, reach you out in the foyer, talk to you individually, hear your stories, hear your questions. It's important to us. So we ask that you just hold your questions and your stories until we see you at the end, and we'd be very, very happy to meet with you. So, let's begin. Begin here. Oh my. Any chance of turning up the volume? Yes. All right, I just yell louder. I guess we gotta get really close to the mic. Is that any better? Okay. No? I hear one now, I hear you. All right. All right, so who are we? We are a committee of doctors, patients, nurses, legislators, and residents just like you. We are your neighbors and friends who collectively understand the importance of keeping South County Hospital a vital part of our community. In 2 previous community meetings, we heard amazing stories about your connection to the hospital and the wonderful care and generations of your family received at the hospital. Know that we appreciate all your stories that reflect your deep roots to the hospital. We acknowledge that times are difficult for healthcare organizations nationally, and reimbursement rates in Rhode Island have added an additional layer that affects bottom lines negatively. How these complex factors are handled requires strong leadership. We are seeking transparent communication and answers from the Board of Trustees and the hospital administration strategy to save the hospital. We suspect many of you do as well. Our team has been working diligently out of concern for the significant losses of critical medical staff, support staff, limits in access to care, and loss of community trust. You may be here tonight due to your awareness that our hospital is facing this perilous time. We suspect that many of you are aware of neighbors and friends that have spoken of hard stories concerning their care. It appears to us that the leadership team and Board of Trustees seem to be looking the other way, dismissive of our negative concerns for our community. Tonight we will introduce you to speakers who will address in-depth issues facing providers of medical services, the challenges facing patients needing services, transparency challenges at the hospital, the potential loss of donor support, and cultural and leadership issues. We urge you to contact the Hospital Board of Trustees to make your concerns known and press for immediate action to address the issues you hear tonight. As previously stated, we contend that strong leadership is required to navigate the waters we now find ourselves in, and just may be the time for change in the time. Please visit our website, SouthCountyHospital.com, to continue to share your concerns, like our Facebook page. Many of you have written already, and we thank you very much. So again, this is an informational program, and we can't take your questions, so if you can remember what your question was at the end, please join us individually out in the foyer after the program. So let's begin. Our first speaker is Dr. Stephen Farah, one of the champions who started to pull this committee together this past summer. Dr. Farah is a native Rhode Islander and resident of South Kingston since 1987. He's founder of the South County Cardiology Group. He was a former director of the South County Cardiac Catheterization Laboratory and past president of the American Heart Association, Rhode Island chapter. Dr. Farah will be our first speaker, introducing a set of other speakers in the areas of cardiology, primary care, and the Cancer Center. I give you Dr. Farah.
Thank you all for coming. You may have noticed there's some clothing in the back. Those aren't for sale, but we may ask for donations at some point in the program to support our cause. As Nan stated, we gather here today to share information with the community, to present a more complete perspective of the events at South County Health under the current leadership. These changes have generated much concern for providers, patients, and community members. Many of you have heard portions of the story, or the hospital's version of the story. But tonight we've assembled speakers who will provide information and many more pieces to the puzzle to provide a clear understanding of why State South County Hospital exists. The first person I'll ask to come up and speak was a member of the Cardiac Rehab Wellness Program. And he's a 20-year summer resident, a 21-year permanent resident. And as I said, he's a former patient of the Cardiac Wellness Program, which was one of the early casualties of this administration. And I ask you to welcome Mr. Jared Aronson.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about the cardiac care and the effect that it's had on many, many individuals. If you were like me, you did not know that there was a cardiac care in South County Hospital until you had a heart attack, which I did. And I had 3 operations in 2012, 2013. And I went for the 3-month remedial care at the hospital, and I decided, because the facility and the excellent staff that was there, that I decided to stay on for 9 additional years. 8 of those years, I was also a financial donor to the hospital. Then they decided to close the gym. Because I was in an 8 o'clock class with 15 other people, they decided to generate a petition to Mr. Robinson to say, to show our concern and hopefully our ability to stay in. Well, I got the petition signed by all 15 people, and I called his office and I asked for 15 minutes so I could present it, also discuss what our activities were. Nobody called me back. It just blew me off. And so that was it. So I stopped my donations. And I had to look at other places for the care. Because having access to the South County Hospital gym was an absolute wonderful facility for all 15 of us. And it was such a shame that we had to go out the way we did. So that's pretty much.
Well, thank you, Derek. He was only in the 8 o'clock class with 15 people. There were 200 or so people in the rehab program, and some of them were there for even longer than 9 years, I know, because I was sort of founded that program when the medical office building went up. I just can't say how important that was for so many of our patients who probably wouldn't exercise, and I'm told by the rehab group, they're not exercising now because the gym closed, and they just don't feel comfortable in other settings because of the cardiac history. Sadly, not only was the gym, the wellness program closed, there were a lot of ancillary programs with that, diabetic teaching, dietary, stress management, the walking program for peripheral vascular disease. The program closed without any input from any of the stakeholders, and I consider myself one of the stakeholders. I'm the reason that gym existed in the basement of that magnitude and that size. We were operating in a small room. And there was no feedback from the cardiology group. We didn't know that it was happening until it was announced. The cardiac rehab staff was caught off guard. No collaboration, no discussion. And the director of the program, my colleague Dr. David Bader, found out the program was closing after the fact. Again, it just illustrates the nature of the relationship between the CEO, Aaron Robinson, and medical staff, the medical community, and the community at large. You guys, that program was for the community, and it was just yanked. The rug was pulled out from under you without any dialogue, without any discussion, without any consideration of what that program meant to so many people. So next, I want to go on by discussing why we left South County Hospital. You may have heard a variety of reasons why we left South County Hospital, but I think you ought to hear the version from the stakeholders, the cardiologists. I need to begin by saying I love South County Hospital. As you heard, it's been my home for 37 years, and just, I get emotional thinking about the changes that have occurred and how that's impacted on the community. It was a diamond in the rough when I arrived, and it blossomed into a great community medical center until recently. The healthcare professionals and staff there have always worked tirelessly to provide high-quality care for their patients. I have worked and trained at hospitals throughout Washington, D.C., while at Georgetown Medical School, 2 hospitals in Cleveland and at Rhode Island hospitals. I've been around a little bit. My first associate, Dr. Neil Brandon, joined me in the year 2000, followed by 4 other well-trained cardiologists. Around 1998, we decided to merge our practice with another independent cardiology group, Cardiovascular Institute of New England. But ultimately, we decided it was best that we join South County Medical Group in 2013, which aligned us more closely with the hospital. We purposely opted for an employment model which provided a low base salary with most of our compensation based on productivity. We knew how we performed, we knew what our volume was, but we didn't want the hospital to be reluctant to hire us because they have lost money on other providers that did underperform. So we proposed an offer which they really couldn't lose. Our base salary was so low. And that worked well, but in 2019, the benefits of this arrangement began to deteriorate. In fact, served as an impediment for our ability to provide good care to our patient. Our patient base grew, but we were restrained from increasing staff, additional physicians, advanced practice providers, practitioners, and physician assistants, and technicians to meet the demands of a growing practice. This led to the inability for patients to obtain appointments on a timely basis and for booking important diagnostic testing. So we met with the administration on several occasions, and we explained why the circumstances were unacceptable. We proposed changes that would enable us to do a better job delivering care, which would increase profitability, not just for our group, but for the hospital, who benefits from a lot of the high-tech testing that's done. These were repeatedly rejected by the CEO because, quote, the numbers don't justify it, end quote. Furthermore, they made no provisions for hiring physicians to replace those scheduled to retire, namely Dr. Brandon and myself. We were told we were not seeing enough patients, and in fact, should expect a pay cut. We recognized that the primary obstacle was Aaron Robinson, who may be competent to run a hospital, but we believe was ill-equipped to operate medical groups. Though thoroughly frustrated, our group decided that we would resign when we found a suitable alternative. We had several discussions with lifespan officials from Yale and Care New England. They all courted us, they all offered employment, and after careful consideration of our options, we joined Care New England. Even when Aaron Robinson accidentally discovered our plans to leave, we leaked to him during a meeting he had with Dr. Gavino, the CEO of Lifespan. He did not come to us to try to talk us out of leaving. And all of these suitors said, why did they let you leave? They couldn't wait for us to join them. Apparently, Mr. Robinson couldn't wait for us to leave. So ultimately, we joined Care New England because they agreed to let us continue consulting at the hospital, which is important to serve our patients, remain geographically in the community at South County, at South Kingstown and Westerly. And we weren't required to go to Kent Hospital. So we were able to maintain the same footprint we had, which best served our patients' needs. So through this arrangement, 2 cardiologists and a nurse practitioner have recently been hired. But we're playing catch up. We've been behind in providing testing and visits on an adequate basis. Patients are waiting 6 months to come in. Physicians are sending patients elsewhere because we got so behind in the transition because Aaron Robinson didn't have the foresight to see we need to at least replace 2 physicians, if not hire a 3rd because of the growth we're experiencing. To our complete surprise, he announced to our office staff in a meeting that, and probably the board, that he had engineered a collaboration with Care New England. He informed his inner circle that we were leaving for more money, a better electronic medical record, and access to advanced technologies and expertise. Apparently to save face. And I told him on several occasions we already had access to advanced technologies and expertise. We had a close working relationship with the Brigham physicians who go to Kent, and we're referring patients to them right along. He didn't bring anything to the group, but that's his story. So we all knew this was a mutiny, not a collaboration, and those were clearly not the reasons why we left. As you will hear, we are not the only disaffected group of medical practitioners to leave South County Medical Group. Next, I'd like to bring up Dr. Heather Mackey-Fowler. Dr. Mackey-Fowler is a family medicine trained physician, previously held positions including assistant professor of family medicine at the University of Massachusetts Medical School and the University of Mass. Family resident and faculty member. She's been a member of the South County community since 2014 and left South County primary care in 2022 after 8 years. She's now the medical director at Oak Street Health in Warwick. Notice that's in Rhode Island. She did not leave the state. So welcome Dr. Mackey.
Thanks, Steve. It's lovely to see everyone here tonight to come out to support the hospital. As Steve said, my name is Heather Matthew Fowler. I'm a family medicine trained physician. I've worked in numerous care settings under multiple different leadership styles. I've worked for 2 national healthcare corporations, Tenet Corporation, as well as most recently Oak Street Health. I've worked in community health centers. I've worked with UMass Medical School leadership and UMass Healthcare leadership. I've been doing this for 20 plus years now. I'm not a new kid on the block anymore. I joined South County Primary Care as part of the medical group in 2014. We were told by previous leadership that we were building a foundation of primary care for the community, which would then support the other specialist members of the medical group, and in turn we'd support the hospital and we'd support the community in bringing services to the community that were desperately needed at the time. I'm not gonna, things were not always roses and rainbows under previous leadership, but when we had disagreements, I felt that we could go to our local leadership and they would bring our concerns to the C-suite, and we'd be heard, we'd be treated fairly, and there'd be a reasonable explanation for the decisions that were made. As my time in the healthcare group continued, the healthcare group, the primary care group grew. Westerly came on board, Cranston, and then Warwick came on board. We took on some new patients in Wakefield from primary care physicians who had retired in the community. This led to our practice being very full, and we then lost one of our docs around 2018 to a move out of state for her husband's job, and then we were full to bursting. But it all felt doable. We had the staff, we had the resources, we felt supported by the hospital. Primary care has never been easy, but we were getting it done. That changed with the new leadership. We were then, things were okay for a little bit, and then we were told that our visit times needed to be decreased. We went from 20 minutes for regular visits and 40 minutes for physicals down to 15 and then 30, which might not seem like that big of a change, but if you're a patient, you know that that time gets whittled down pretty quickly, and we very quickly began to feel like we weren't being given the amount of time that we needed to appropriately take care of our patients. Our new contracts came out and the productivity requirements were increased. There really wasn't any increase in any salary. It was just, these are the new requirements and you will meet them or you will get a pay cut. And so what happened was we were trying to see more patients, the staff was doing more work, the staff became disillusioned and started to leave. Sometimes they were replaced, sometimes they weren't. We were also transitioning to a new medical record at that time, and were promised resources in implementing that medical record. Eventually we found out that what we were promised was not what we were given, and so that put more work on our staff to scan the documents from the old EMR that we were told would be brought over electronically, and morale started to decrease. We started to feel like we were, sort of the, little Dutch boy with our finger in the dike, working later hours, leaving, we didn't want to spend less time with our patients, so what would happen is we would not look at the task we were being sent at the EMR, we were not signing documents, we were not, calling patients back until 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And this was the case for me and for my partners in primary care Wakefield. We went through multiple managers during that time. They felt that they were being held to unattainable standards. They didn't like how they were being treated by the leadership, and so they left. Both of these managers, I had known from other settings. One was a very successful manager of a local primary care practice before she came to South County Health to manage the primary care group, and the second one that left had managed a large multi-specialty practice in upstate New York, of which I have friends that practice there, and she helped to make that successful. I've heard similar stories among other managerial lines in different subsets of the hospital. And things sort of slowly started coming to a head. My breaking point was in 2022 when primary care all met with the C-suite in the beautiful conference room. I was, as one of the more outspoken members of the primary care group, was asked to share some feedback that we felt would be constructive and to help move the primary care group forward. After I said my comment, I was aghast when the president and CEO of the hospital literally stood up, leaned over the table, and yelled at me. It didn't matter if I was wrong, and I might very well have been wrong, but I've never been spoken to so disrespectfully in my life, and that was when I said, I'm done. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave my patients. I was practicing cradle to grave family medicine. I took a completely different job, and I'm doing just geriatrics in Warwick. I very much miss my 3-minute commute, but my life is so much better since I've left South County Hospital. And I miss being a primary care physician to this community. Some of my patients have followed me to Warwick, and for that I'm profoundly grateful.
One thing that came to mind as you were speaking that you didn't mention is, these metrics that you'll hear, or benchmarks. There's some national benchmarks, primarily devised by insurance companies, that says this is how many minutes you should spend with a patient. Well, it's kind of different if they have an earache, or if they have congestive heart failure, diabetes, and hypertension, and had a heart attack 2 months earlier. That takes a little more time, but we can't put patients in a box. As physicians, we try to give them what they need without looking at the clock every minute. It takes 5 minutes or so, sometimes one for me, just to figure out which medicines my patients are on. They see multiple providers. They come in with lists, but I say, Joe, that's not the right list. We stopped that medicine last year. Oh yeah, I didn't update it yet. So it's a very difficult, challenging thing to provide care. When you're in a box and it's a 15-minute slot, it makes it even more difficult. And if you're going to just go by the clock, then the patient's left the office without really getting any benefit. A hospital has chronically, historically failed to recognize something known as downstream revenue. So when Dr. Mackey policies for patients, she orders labs. She orders an x-ray if appropriate. She orders EKG. She orders consultation. She sends people to surgeons for procedures, x-rays. So all of these things are revenue producing for the hospital, but they're not credited or attributed to the primary care doctor that ordered it. So her visit may have generated the hospital, $50, but she ordered $400 worth of testing for that patient who needed it. But that's not counted. It's just looked upon that we only generated $50 of business in that 15 minutes we were not working hard. My next speaker is another primary care physician. Many of you may know him because he's been here, I'd like to say longer than me, but I think he hasn't. Dr. Christopher Van Hemmer. He's been on the active medical staff for 38 years. I said 37, but probably 37 and a half. For 15 years, he's served as a board-certified emergency physician in the emergency room here. So he's got multiple skills. He's an internist, a board-certified internist. He spent additional 23 years in practice as an internist. Part of that was with Dr. Russell Parker and Shelley Johnson, and currently he's providing primary care at Thundermist Health Center in Wakefield. So I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Christopher Van Hemmer.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Can you hear me now? Okay. Let me start with a little bit of housekeeping with a little bit of background on my credentials. Steve alluded to the fact that I am an internist. I'm actually double boarded in internal medicine and emergency medicine. And so when I came to Rhode Island from Hartford, I looked at my options, and they were multiple. I loved emergency medicine, but I trained as an internist. And I'll never forget one of the sayings of my mentor and teacher at Hartford Hospital, where I did my internal medicine training. He said, an internist is just a slow GP. An ER doc is a fast GP. We're all GPs. So we become specialized in different ways. That I wear my fast hat when I'm in the ER, I wear my slow hat when I'm in the office. But I've been doing this, as Steve has mentioned, in this community only for the past 35 plus years. And I've enjoyed every minute of it in every setting that I've worked in. But I'll tell you something else about my credentials. My real credentials are the fact that I've raised a family in Rhode Island, 4 children, my wife Lisa, who has stood by me throughout this difficult career, and my kids are still all with us, close by for the most part. One's still in California, she'll come home. But we've raised them here, and we intend to stay here. This is our community, and I'm still a patient here, and I want to continue to be a patient here, both in the community and at this local community hospital. And we've all worked hard to make that happen, and we're not going to let it go at the whim. So let me tell you a little bit more about the things that I've done for service in our hospital. I've never been a president of the medical staff, but I have worked on several initiatives with the hospital. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is I've worked and I continue to chair the Pharmacy and Therapeutics Committee of the South County Hospital, which I have a great relationship with. I've also worked in the past with leadership and the medical staff to negotiate fair reimbursements for a small community hospital like South County Hospital. This goes back to the 1990s. And we've been struggling for a while. We're the last standing independent community hospital in the state. And we've been able to do that because we've been innovative, we've been creative, we've been resourceful, and we've always been able to differentiate ourselves. And we've done that in so many ways. We've done that when we brought in an orthopedic group that brought dynamism to the hospital and really put the hospital on the map, and literally rescued the hospital during a time of extreme financial difficulty. We've had leaders who have fostered this relationship through time. I've also worked with hospital leadership and the medical staff to create the first hospital-based medical group with South County Hospital, with what's called the Management Service Organization, the MSO, which was a relationship that we established. It included primary care physicians as well as specialists. We had a dermatologist on staff. And this was a nascent beginning of a way to develop collaboration with the hospital. I also helped to negotiate and participate in the transition for the running or the management of the emergency department when it went from a privately held group to a group that was managed by a large national group organization called Team Health. These were difficult negotiations and there was a lot of tension, but we worked it out. And the key with all of these initiatives, the word that I want to bring home to you is collaboration. All of this was done with collaboration between medical staff, leadership, and we got things done. We didn't always agree, but we got things done. And there was compromise. And here we are. Now, through all this time, I've traveled with a number of CEOs. I think many of you may know Don Ford. He was the CEO when I first arrived. He's the father of the hospital as far as I knew, but there were predecessors for him as well. And then he retired and he was followed by Tony Mazzarelli. Well, Tony Mazzarelli was not a very popular guy. And so the medical staff wasn't happy with his relationship with the medical staff, his culture. And we petitioned the board and they agreed and he was dismissed. And he was followed by Ralph Misto, who was a wonderful person. Ralph started with the hospital as a lab tech, worked his way up the ranks, became president of the staff, CEO. He was loved by all. He was a collaborative person, worked with everybody. Didn't always agree with Ralph, but he got things done, and we worked very well together. And then he retired, and then we had another fellow by the name of Patrick Muldoon. And things didn't work out that well with Patrick. Patrick stayed on for about 4 years. And there was a similar disagreement between medical staff and leadership. And the medical staff collectively met and petitioned the Board of Trustees to let him go. And these were tough deliberations. They didn't just bend over and say, sure, how do you want me to jump? But they agreed. And then he was followed by Lou Giancola. And Lou was a wonderful person, but let me tell you, Lou, when he started out in his first few years, the hospital lost a lot of money. We were in tough shape. We were now in the midst of every other hospital having aligned themselves with large entities, Lifespans, Care New England's, you name it. And South County Hospital and Wesley were the last standing independent community hospitals. We had to really think hard about, can we keep doing this on our own? And we decided we could. And there was a little back and forth about that, but guess what? The Frost building was built. We developed a cancer center. The medical office building came into creation, providing housing for specialists and primary care physicians. And we made it. We rallied. And then, of course, Lou retired. And then Lou was replaced with our current CEO. Now, you've heard a lot about the relationship with the CEO. The thing that I want to bring home is the issue of culture, the interactions. I don't have personal interactions with Adam Robinson. I am not here to participate in any sort of character assassination. But I am here to tell you that the leadership style, the behavior, is not appropriate for the staff, for the hospital, for the community. And the last time we presented this at a town hall forum at the Towers in Narragansett, the board and the hospital leadership framed the issue as, well, South County Hospital is in a difficult healthcare environment in Rhode Island. We get that. We have known that for decades. That's not the issue. The elephant in the room, my friends, is the culture. The response to that, the end of that meeting concluded with the the president of the Board of Trustees, Joe Matthews, saying, and I'll quote his words, "We will fix this." And he turned to Karen Smith, who offered her services and consultation, and said, "I want to meet with you, and we're going to talk about this." And that was back in September. And time went on, we thought, something's going to happen here. I have no aspirations that Aaron Robinson or anybody will be getting fired. The idea was to solve the problem with or without him. We will fix this can mean many things. Well, the outcome of that was, I believe, he just doubled down, as did many of the board members. So here we are today, going through the same process, and we're not here to talk about metrics, but metrics will, become a factor for the hospital to survive as an independent hospital. We're very much aware at this point in time that the hospital does have to merge, partner with a larger entity, and an entity that's a sustainable, reliable entity, not some, venture capital entity that's out of state that will just run us into the ground, but one that has the interests and the continuity of the hospital and the community in mind. So we're not here to reminisce and lament about the old days. We're not a bunch of rabble-rousers, as you might have heard. We're here because we care about the future of the hospital, and we have a little bit of experience and knowledge about the past, and we want to apply that experience and that knowledge to the future. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris. I know a lot of you have heard things about the Cancer Center, why the resignations occurred. I think it's difficult to appreciate what happened to the practitioners and the staff in the Cancer Center because the story was unfolding over an extended period of time. Unfortunately, Dr. Angela Tabor, the former director of the Cancer Center, could not be present tonight, but she has permitted me to share her story as best I can. And I may drone on with details, but I think that the details accumulated in a very difficult and untenable situation for the staff. Angela said to me, if I were to go back, maybe I would do things differently. I said, the only thing you should do differently is left sooner, because you were on your way to Butler if you didn't. So that was my impression. She was really, she was amazing. Anyway, so Dr. Tabor began her employment at South County Health in December of 2019. Her contract provided that she had to have 3 days in the clinic and 2 days for administrative duties. So at that time, there was a departure of a physician and a nurse practitioner, and the clinical patient load was very high, necessitating that she see patients every day until 2021. At that point, she was able to transition to 4 clinical days a week and was not able to really transition to 3 days in the clinic until Dr. Matthew Danish was hired in the fall of 2023. But by then, the clinical workload had increased, and the request for another nurse practitioner was made, but declined. During this time, the staff was required to rely on an electronic medical record, which made it very difficult to function efficiently. The staff did not send HIPAA-compliant emails or messages to each other. They could not be documented in the record. A true patient portal did not exist for patients to communicate with their providers. And this resulted in more phone calls, decreased patient satisfaction, and the need for more staff to manage all these phone calls. Prescription refill requests from pharmacies sent by email could not be executed within the medical record, unlike every other electronic medical record that I've ever dealt with. And we had to deal with 3 during the time that Erin Robinson was there since 2019, so there's been a lot of transition. Imaging studies could only be ordered on paper rather than electronically. Many times these were misplaced or lost. Invariably, the scans weren't completed prior to the patient's visit, so the visit had to be rescheduled because the information needed to treat the patient was not available. Labs could not be ordered just before their next visit in the system. And all these inefficiencies increased provider frustration and workload, adding unnecessary hours to their weekly schedule. Most importantly, there was no ability to track clinical performance or financial data in the cancer center using the EMR. Curiously, after the resignations occurred, the staff was informed that all of these functions could actually be done on this EMR. And unfortunately, they did not put on form earlier when it could have been of value. The South County Hospital Medical Group adopted a newer, improved EMR called Meditech Expanse, but the oncologists were not able to use it since chemotherapy ordering was tied to the inpatient EMR, which was different, and could not be transitioned to their EMR. So that didn't help. So during Dr. Tabor's tenure, medical assistant staffing decreased from 5 medical assistants to 1 or 2 medical assistants per day for 5 providers. The center only had 1 nurse navigator who was responsible for the chemotherapy program. This entailed obtaining pre-authorization, obtaining co-pay funding, educational sessions for the patients, obtaining consent, and close monitoring of between 150 and 200 patients on oral chemotherapy. Only 1 nurse was responsible for triaging all patient calls, returning calls, and meeting new patients along with a host of other duties, which necessitated that the busy physicians and nurse practitioner had to perform a lot of non-provider work. In attempting to maintain and improve quality at the cancer center, Dr. Tabor was successful in qualifying for participation in the initial certification round to obtain what's called Quality Oncology Practice Initiative certification from the American Society of Clinical Oncology. She did not proceed to the final site visit for certification because she could not demonstrate that they had adequate processes in place to monitor chemotherapy due to staff shortages. Additional staffing was denied by the administration because of national benchmarks and metrics, but this did not take into account the inefficiency in the system that I just described to you, which caused increased workload on the staff. The fact that their patients were seen for urgent and same-day visits rather than being referred to the emergency room, and that providers and staff also supported an infusion center, a busy infusion center. The loss of the on-site PET scanner gave birth to a nice new entrance, but the PET scanner was lost, and this is a crucial imaging for cancer patients. It now requires them to travel to Warwick or Providence for their testing. The result was that the images could not be easily integrated into the electronic medical record or compared with prior results. Thus, interpretation was suboptimal and care was often delayed. Dr. Tabor also served as the Cancer Committee Chair and Cancer Center Liaison for the Commission on Cancer Certification for South County Hospital. It's a long time. But this required adherence to multiple standards and performance of quality projects along community education and yearly cancer screening events. So from this program, the director of quality informed her that, you need 1.5 to 2 full-time equivalents to support the work of the quality work of the cancer center. Dr. Tabor had no help. She completed all of this herself in addition to her other necessary duties. Reaccreditation was granted at their first site visit in 2022, and she was selected out of be one out of 47 individuals out of 1,500. She was nominated for the 2024 Cancer Liaison Physician Outstanding Performance Award. So I think she was doing a good job. Through this endeavor, this quality program, she became aware the cancer registry was underperforming. and that it was over 8 months behind in reporting new cancer diagnoses. The Rhode Island Department of Health, in fact, requires reporting within 6 months. By contracting with a different organization, a savings of $100,000 per year was realized, along with a significant improvement in the reporting process. Unfortunately, upon her departure, there was no one invested in the work of monitoring and maintaining quality of care in the cancer center. Under Dr. Tabor's leadership, after 3 years, the number of new patients increased from the low 300s to 551 in 2023. This changed the cancer center's status from a community oncology practice to a comprehensive community oncology practice. To maintain the status, increased participation in clinical trials would be required. And she presented this to the administration as both an exciting treatment opportunity for South County Hospital and a significant potential revenue stream to provide support for her staff and a portion of her salary spent on research. Ultimately, she was told they would not be able to support this endeavor from a revenue cycle/billing perspective, and they were concerned research patients would be inadvertently billed or double billed by the hospital. Typically, research expenses, including related visits, are paid by the sponsor, but the hospital did not have a mechanism to separate those visits and those charges, and they were concerned about overbilling. I can attest that when we did research in our office, we were confronted with the same problem a few years earlier in the hospital. It was a struggle to get the hospital to not bill for things that were going to be paid for by another entity because their system somehow couldn't handle it. In April 2023, a very bleak financial picture was presented that made her question the sustainability of the cancer center. She reached out to the American Oncology Network, a physician-led nationwide organization with specialization in operating community oncology programs. They offer more efficient oncology EMR, better pricing of both IV and oral chemotherapy than our hospital was able to achieve, a concierge program that would take care of prior authorizations, monitoring and documentation of drugs, and would ensure patients would receive their drugs on a timely basis. The hospital did not wish to deal with a for-profit entity and felt this arrangement would be, quote, too risky for the physicians financially. During that time, she discovered that significant underbilling occurred at a loss of approximately 25% of outpatient provided revenue for over a year. The hospital was not billing for what the oncologists were doing completely, to the tune of 25% less. Also, there was $250,000 of chemotherapy rebate money that was not attributed to the infusion center, but somehow had been transferred into a general account. Not very good bookkeeping. And I want to point out that the company that took over the emergency room, Team Health, is a for-profit company that provides ER physicians for hospitals. And the radiation oncology services that we contract is also a for-profit group. So to say that it wasn't a good fit for South County to deal with for-profit organizations doesn't make sense to me. In December of 2023, her 4-year contract was up for renewal. Despite all the dramatic improvements she and her colleagues brought to the cancer center, she was informed that her contract would not be favorable because times had changed, quote unquote. She was told by Dr. Charpentier, the chief medical officer, that quality isn't everything. Oh, it's a quote. Instead of offering help in meeting the challenges in the cancer center, he said, quote, South County Hospital is really good at running a hospital, but not good at running clinics. No help was offered. Given all this, she explored an arrangement with the American Oncology Network in which they would rent the space in the cancer center from the hospital. The physicians would have the ability to make decisions regarding provider and support staffing. They have much more efficient model, better drug pricing, better revenue cycle support. The hospital decided it did not wish to pursue this option, but offered no other alternatives. And Dr. Seidler, one of the oncologists, who had not resigned, went out on medical leave. The clinical burden increased dramatically and no additional help was provided. Workloads were overwhelming, requiring providers to work late at night at home, and try to catch up on weekends. The request to hire a physician assistant who was available was denied, along with funds to compensate their nurse practitioner to take weekend call. At one point, Dr. Tabor told me that she took call 3 weekends in a row. Currently, most of the call is provided by hospitalists, who are clearly not trained in oncology. The locum tenens physicians that replace the staff do not take call. Finally, an extremely disruptive and threatening patient arrived at the clinic and demanded prescriptions as he had lost his PCP. He lost and kicked out of the open practice. He had been disrupted previously in the PCP's office, and the police were called. In short, Dr. Tabor and the staff felt the situation was poorly handled by the administration, specifically Drs. Kevin Charpentier and Drs. Kwiatkowski. And this further added to the extremely stressful and difficult working environment. After everyone resigned, there appeared to be unlimited resources, no concerns for the cost of these resources. A practice nurse was provided 3 days a week, and medical assistants appeared from other practices. The EMR suddenly had many of the capabilities that the staff was previously told were not available. Somehow, the hospital now had funds to hire travel nurses and 3 locum tenens physicians at twice the cost. The oncologists never asked for a raise. They asked for support for their staff, and there was no funds then. Dr. Tabor wondered how this could be a more sustainable option than simply working with the cancer specialists to help find a way for them to continue to provide excellent care for their patients. Dr. Tabor loved working in the community. She loved working with her well-trained provider colleagues and the entire cancer center staff. She was proud of her accomplishments at South County Hospital, for her expertise, and the expertise of the other healthcare workers was significantly undervalued. She was devoted to delivering the highest quality care to her patients in her community. I learned that she was inspired to practice community oncology by her sister, who died of sarcoma at age 26 and had to travel over an hour to Boston to get care. She gave her heart and soul to the program and the community, a considerable sacrifice to her personal life and family. So the questions remain: was the hospital managing the cancer center optimally from a financial standpoint? Hard to believe it was. But the cancer center was not financially viable previously. How can it be sustainable now with the increases in expenses incurred by the hiring of local tenens physicians and a clear decrease in patients now seeking care there? Those of you who go to the cancer center will find a lot of empty chairs, and I'm told by the practitioners who were there and resigned that many of their patients are taking care elsewhere. So if the American Oncology Network is not the solution for South County Hospital, what is the alternative? None have been provided. Next, I want to bring up a patient who has been at the center for some time. She is a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a retired elementary teacher, and I'd like you to hear her perspective on the cancer center from a patient standpoint. And I'd like to introduce Pamela Westcott.
My usual audience is a lot shorter. And I don't have my glasses. What Steve shared with you is a lot that I was not aware of. But I will tell you what my journey was like, and I see some familiar faces who were there with me, and I know that there are people in the audience who have made a journey like this. When you get that diagnosis, it's personal. And the connection that you build with your oncologist and the staff is just key to your own well-being and ultimately your survival. So we have a great deal of respect for Dr. Tabor and the entire staff. But I'm going to go back and start at the beginning. This has been our community since 1970. Children were born here. We've taught in this community, coached in this community, and we want the hospital to continue. It's been our family's hospital home. My journey began with the annual mammogram, when it revealed a IDC, and then I moved on from there with wonderful Sue Hall, who facilitated the beginning of the journey. And Dr. Capuano did a biopsy and then the surgery, a lumpectomy. And then I entered into the 5-year standard protocol, finished in anastrozole, and that was 2018, 2019 when it began. Sometime later, I discovered a enlargement node in my neck. And so that exploration began. By that time, Dr. Capuano was gone, and so was Dr. Colvin, my first oncologist. And then I met Dr. Tabor. The diagnosis was follicular lymphoma, which I was told is no grade and slow growing. So it really was a matter of watching and monitoring with regular scans. My husband and I took a wonderful trip to the Canadian Rockies. And I came home with an little extra something special. I came home with Omicron version of COVID and became very ill. And as a result of that, I learned that the lymph nodes in my mesentery, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, my belly, had tripled in size, and I became progressively more ill. So I knew that I was headed for full treatment. I was ready. I wanted it. I wanted to go through it. When you get that diagnosis, you know you do what you have to do. I had a wonderful experience. People in the staff of the Cancer Center could not have done more. And when you're there during the transfusion weeks, you have a lot of time to watch and listen and really see how the staff is working together. It's really amazing. And it's not just that they have to double check who's giving the meds, are you giving it to the correct person and the correct amount. It's so much more than that. When I fell asleep during one transfusion, I woke up and I thought, oh, I think I skipped lunch. They were right there with the lunch. When they first administered the cancer drug, which I always trip over pronouncing, I had a reaction. And Dr. Tabor and kind of did the 100-yard dash from the other wing of the cancer center. And along with the team, administered investment. It worked. So that was, my course ended in the summer of 2023. My last appointment with Dr. Tabor was July 25th, 2024. And it was wonderful seeing her, and of course we always like to get great news, which continues. But then the following Monday, I opened the Providence Journal, and on the first page, there's the devastating news that the oncologist had resigned. It just didn't compute in my brain. This is not Dr. Tabor. This is not these people. What happened? And so I immediately emailed the senior leadership of the hospital, met hospital has never answered that question. You know, they project that, oh, well, medicine in our country, yes, okay. The state of Rhode Island is not supporting the reimbursements for insurance. Yes, we know that. But when it's a personal thing, and you're not keeping your medical staff, that's something far more. My husband and I heard about the press conference that the hospital was going to hold. And we thought we would try to attend. So we walked into the hospital and we were photographed and had to sign our names onto the device under the atrium counter. And then we were asked to wait on the side, but we could be escorted. Okay, so we did. And we were escorted through the hallways of the hospital and then up the elevator I was not familiar with. And when we got off the elevator, I turned and looked and I said, oh, I know where I am. This is the old maternity ward. I guess it's now called the third floor. Is that right? The corporate offices. The press conference is going to be held in the corporate center on the third floor. And as we walked down the hallway, we were met by a young woman who stopped us immediately. And she said, this is a press conference. Okay. This is a press conference. And repeated it. And so I asked the question, so are you telling me we're not allowed? This is a press conference. We heard the same thing over and over again. And a young man joined hers, same thing. So we said, okay, we got it, we're not allowed. We turned around. I will say this, they did step forward and they did ask for an email that they would send us the link for the streaming. So we get there to see it. Turned to walk the hallway to the other set of elevators I know and walked right by our cancer center. I had to stop in and say hello. Then we went to the towers that night. We tried to register to be admitted to that, and of course, most of it, I think it was you and Lloyd, right? Most of us were not permitted to attend. So we stood outside with our signs there and had a nice time meeting people that are walking by. Many of them said, what are you doing? Why are you here? What's going on? So it was a way to reach out. And that's been the journey so long since, for me, since August. These tremendous people that have done so much work on our behalf of trying to get the word out to all of you. I will continue to speak on behalf of our medical staff and all the support staff that Dr. Tabor and her colleagues are really fighting for. So they wouldn't to continue to lose them. Not that they were looking for a higher salary, as that's been said, or to move on to something else. They wanted to stay there. On Saturday, I received another long public relations release from the hospital. I think we've been having it pretty regularly. So I read through the whole thing, and at the bottom was news about the cancer center. And this is what I'm going to leave you with. These are my my strong feelings. We think resentment. And all this time, we have never heard the truth as to why these doctors chose to leave. And the other thing is, at the bottom, it talked about the shortfalls that the cancer center is facing. 2-something million. I did not write that figure down. And that they had a solution, they being the senior management. But the solution was exactly what I heard Dr. Taylor present to them. To me, that was not discouraging, disappointing. It's resentment. Thank you.
We heard from a patient who was very much touched by the change that have gone on in the cancer center. And I tried to provide in maybe boring detail the blow-by-blow challenges that the cancer center staff and physicians faced every day over an extended period of time that eventually wore them out and drove them out. As a physician, it's a very big thing to say, I'm going to leave my patients. So you can imagine how traumatized it was for them. And it wasn't just the director. All but one of them resigned. And that individual happened to be out on medical leave. He's close to retirement. Would have been difficult to start over. I don't know why. I haven't talked to him to say I know for sure why he stayed, but I can surmise that it was easier for him to do that. The next speaker is going to talk about Cancer Center now. He's been involved in the Cancer Center from the inception. His name is Dr. Larry Grepstein, PhD. He's a retired clinical psychologist and a diplomat in clinical psychology with the American Board of Professional Psychology. Since 2013, he's volunteered at the Cancer Center, where he works with cancer patients, their families, consults with the staff, supervises doctoral students from the University of Rhode Island, PhD program in clinical psychology. And he's a member of the active referring medical staff at South Kingstown High School. He's been a professor of psychology at the University of Rhode Island for 42 years. So he'll provide you a current perspective of his observations in the Cancer Center. Dr. Grepstein?
Thank you, Steve. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I will try to be brief. I'd like to begin with a quote from Henry Moore, the famous English sculptor. My belief is that no matter what advances we make in technology and in the controlling of nature and so on, the real basis of life is human relationships. It's through them that we are happy or unhappy, and that we fulfill ourselves or we don't. Relationships have been the soul of South Kingstown High School. The relationships between the medical staff, the doctors, the nurses, the support staff have been what has characterized this community hospital. I love this hospital. I was successfully treated for cancer in 2006, and I experienced emergency life-saving surgery at the hospital. I'm very indebted and grateful to them to be here to speak to you today. If there was one word that would characterize cancer, it would be uncertainty. When you get the diagnosis of cancer, questions go through your head like, am I going to live? How long am I going to live? What kind of treatment am I going to have? What's the quality of my life going to be like while I'm getting that treatment? How long is the treatment going to last? To get through this, you need to have a relationship with a caring and dedicated medical staff, which is what we had. I've been at the center since 2011. There is one nurse remaining from when I started. Other than that, there has been a 100% turnover in staff at all levels. This has been just positively, as you already heard, devastating for the patients. Among the things I do is I run a support group. I have people in that group who've been in treatment for 17 or 18 years. So again, the relationships are extremely important. Not knowing that your doctor is going to be there to see you through this is extremely, extremely disturbing. We have hired local tenants, they're competent physicians, but you don't establish a relationship in a week or two or a month. It takes a long time. And I'm afraid what has been lost can only be found again if somehow we are able to return the original oncology staff. What's happened to the Cancer Center, while it still functions, it's lost its soul, and I'm hoping we can regain it. Thank you.
Thank you to all our speakers, and special thanks to Dr. Farah for his introduction and the information that you've heard tonight. Okay, we're almost there. So I see that many of you shaking your heads, and many of you look around. I'm sorry. Oh. Okay, so we're almost there. So just, how would you like to do a little stretch while you're sitting down? Just kind of take your, you can stand up if you want. Put your hands up in the air. Over them and stretch, right, and then left, and then right, and then left. Standing up, maybe you want to lean towards one side like a ballerina. Lean towards the other side of the ballerina. And if you're sitting down, just take your hands and watch out your neighbor. Just put your hands in front, kind of wiggle your hands around, and then come back to sit. We have a few more dynamite speakers we're going to listen to. So let's get on with it. Okay. Our next speaker is going to talk a little bit about the area of transparency. Our speaker is Laurie Kelly. She's a local resident and South County activist who led the charge for the beautiful library now in Narragansett. Laurie has been a great inspiration for this committee, keeping us grounded and keeping us going. And like all of us wants to see the hospital continue for all now and in the future. Laurie?
Thank you. This is on, right? Yeah. I don't have all that much to say, although I do want to start right off with picking up what Pam said about, not being allowed into the press conference. The board keeps issuing statements saying they've been so patient with us, they've given us all the information. We were banned from the press conference, the initial one. I know they only allowed 69 people into the towers, which was a terrible venue for having participation. This is so much better. You can see all the seats here. We can, thank you all for coming out. And there was a meeting in the Potter Conference Room, of which there were 6 or 8 of us, maybe 20 altogether, who were invited to meet the board. Dr. Tabor was one of the speakers, a lot of the physicians who had problems. And there were about 8 of us. When we got to the hospital said in the lobby, you can't go up there. And that included a major donor who had a plaque on the entry of the hospital. So as far as being, forthright with us, they are not. They are not helping. The whole front row is reserved for the board. I don't see anyone from the board that bothered to come. We sent them invitations. Because, it is based on exchange of ideas. They have to hear us and the esteemed, doctors and nurses that work there, and that's not happening at this point. So it was originally, my speech was my section was supposed to be on financials. I want to say that, they release what they legally have to release, which is an annual audited report. If you look on their website, however, what they're reporting for the last couple of years is just their revenues. So are they losing money? Are they making money? Here's our revenues. So if you look at their audited reports for 2022, it's 990s on the ProPublica report, in case I get the numbers wrong. I took them off that. They had a $5.9 million operating loss in 2022 and 6.5 in 2023. For the 12 of us that were able to go to the towers, they alluded to another loss for this year. Their fiscal year ends the end of September, so they already know what their loss or profit for 24 was. I have not seen it posted yet, so I don't know. Maybe they turned it around. I want to bring your attention to this, though, because those are significant losses. The doctors are leaving, the nurses are leaving, people who are invested in the community, and they're stonewalling on this without releasing a lot of detail of why the operations are losing money. I would be remiss if I didn't say that it also draws attention to, on those same ProPublica pages, Aaron Robinson was hired in 2019, but he appears on the audited results, his salary of $442,000 in 2020. His salary in 2023 is recorded at $854. At the towers, many of you, I don't know specifically you, but community members ask over and over again, why is his salary doubled when the last 2 years are huge losses? And the board, various members said, it's data driven. It's data driven. You wouldn't understand all the stuff that goes into it. If you look at CEOs across the nation, he's at 50th percentile? They said something like that. But we're not across the nation. We shouldn't be compared with other markets. So that's concerning. It's hard to look at, like I said, it was there 2019, 2021. 2021, we had the pandemic. There were major things that happened through that. There was less utilization of the hospital, and you could delay having surgery. They delayed it. And there was a huge spike in labor costs for getting nurses and critical care people in the hospital. So the federal government also gave hospitals a lot of money, cash, during 20 and 21. So I'm just saying, as an overall thing, it's really hard to see what's going on, except the operating costs are going, the cost of running the hospital, all their pharma and not so much their labor, but a lot of their costs are going up, and their revenue stream is not going up. And it's hard to see with the doctors and providers leaving how this is going to get better. Dr. Farah talked about, primary care. If your doctor says go get a CAT scan or a blood test, they send you to the hospital that they want that work to be done. When your doctor leaves and goes to Warwick, you're probably following them. You're not getting the test done at the hospital. But this is the kind of operating stuff that, they're not sharing with us. They're saying there's nothing to see here. The board constantly says, that they endorse the CEO. I guess my major point is transparency, not just the financials. We request more information about the operations and the financials of the hospital. We would like to see quarterly unaudited financials so everyone in the community can follow along. This is our hospital. We need to preserve it, and showing us revenues without expenses is just not acceptable. Others tonight have spoken a little bit about the failure of the administration to retain the esteemed and experienced providers. This is a serious problem. They're having problems recruiting people to this area because of things like the low reimbursement, in Rhode Island, which everyone knows is lower than Connecticut, Massachusetts. And it's hard to get people who have significant medical debt to move here. Well, these people are here. They have houses, they have kids in school, and they're leaving us. So there is a major problem which the board needs to analyze and listen to. I think that there are real challenges going forward, and there's structural problems facing a small independent hospital. And that's, again, why this group endorses having some sort of outreach to a larger system, because what we've seen, Westerly partnered with Yale New Haven, seems to be going well for them. They're getting investment in technology, upgrades in the physical plant, all the sort of things that are tough when you're on your own. And also, being able to purchase the pharmacological drugs at a reduced price because you're in a bigger system. Everyone in this room supports the hospital, and everyone wants to see it continue for another 100 years. Many of this.
Well, sure. South County isn't alone in such struggles. We're not saying that we are. But there's all the cost pressures, reimbursements, changes we need to tackle. But the one thing that has not and should never change is the passion that is lived out every day by the providers and staff. Their desire to do work that has purpose, is worthwhile, and makes a difference. And we can hear that and see that tonight from all the providers that have spoken. We've heard multiple testimonies of that, and we also feel their frustration in being in the trenches. Leaders have to often convey tough messages and have a skill set that includes leading through change. Not developing that skill set only overdraws the account of those that they lead. Leadership is more about influence than authority, and inspiring and uplifting people rather than talking down to them. I would argue that the manner in which passionate people are led through tough changes is one of the most important skills for senior leaders. Leaders who must also embrace continuous learning of their own skills to meet the changing environment. What we have been witness to includes a disregard for managing change, an unwillingness to adequately partner with key stakeholders, which has led to the environment we're now experiencing. Important leadership skills include modeling the behaviors expected of employees and transparent accountability for accomplishments as well as failures. That takes honest communication at all levels by discussing the why of changes first rather than jumping into the what and how. Making the why the first approach helps everybody listening to start connecting their head to their heart when they're passionate caregivers. A favorite saying of mine in the consulting world is, we can't go back to band camp. We don't have to go back. We have to move forward and talk about change. We can't say it's the way we always did it. We have to let go of those cherished childhood blankets and the things that kept us calm all those years. The Alliance for Healthcare Research studied high-performing organizations and found key elements that show direct correlation between employee engagement and turnover with quality and growth indicators. Somebody asked me one day, do you think, Karen, that medical errors that happen in the hospital happen more in bad culture? Absolutely. Thank you all for answering that. Yes. What is important to employee physicians? We've heard from a lot of them tonight. They want to know that patients are receiving quality care and a great experience. They want to work with team members who have the information needed to be efficient with their time. They need a seat at the table to provide input when decisions are being made that affect outcomes. and to see follow-through on their input. It's not hard. Focus, fix, follow. Finally, they want to be appreciated. In a recent article titled "The Return on Investment of Physician Recruitment and Retention," I do keep reading even as though I'm retired. The author wrote a book called "Preventing Physician Burnout," and he dug into the cost of physician burnout resulting in turnover. Both are on the table. He had a simple calculation. He took the average net revenue generated by each physician, including revenue from both the inpatient and outpatient admissions and procedures. We've talked about the fact that we're forfeiting a lot of revenue from procedures that aren't being done at South County Hospital anymore. He conducted surveys that determined the average net revenue per physician across all specialties, the average cost per physician hire, and the time to fill calculation for each physician leaving. Pardon my consulting thing. He concluded the average organization could be losing about $200,000 a month in revenue. And then if you multiply that by the total number of physicians that resigned and add in the recruitment costs, the math is astounding. Strategic thinking is a key feature of the C-suite. However, it can't be at the expense of a toxic culture. A former leader in my consulting role once said, "Culture outperforms strategy every time. And culture with strategy is unbeatable." And he was right. Barriers to change include denial of the problem, it's not our problem, avoiding looking in the mirror, rationalizing or coming up with reasons why something isn't working, blaming, finding other places to blame, like insurance reimbursement is to blame for all our troubles. Lack of skill, I mentioned before, not committing the leadership team to develop their skills. Previous studies have shown that the number one reason people leave organizations is because of a leader. The Harvard Business Review showed how an environment of positivity can boost morale and allow everyone to become the best version of themselves. And post-COVID studies have shown that employees need to trust their senior leaders even more strongly. So what characteristics do they have? Most successful leaders have? Authenticity and believability. Trust doesn't come automatically. It's kind of like a forest. It has to grow, it takes years to flourish, but you can lose it in the blaze of one fire. Knowing and understanding the hidden costs of tolerating a toxic culture have to be on the table in the C-suite. A leader's integrity, honesty, and values not only shape their decision-making and resilience in the face of adversity, but also inspire trust and respect among their followers. I don't think you've been hearing that tonight. They have to be empathetic and be able to understand and share the feelings of others. And that allows them to help, allows others to thrive, the employees to thrive. They have to have the instinct to know when to push and when to back off. They have to be able to appropriately sequence change. Remember why first, then what, then how. They need to support an always culture. This is always important. We don't give up that. Sadly, in times of adversity and change, the true characteristics of a leader are revealed. And just this week, I saw another little link on LinkedIn, actually. Someone who wrote a book called Your Next 5 Moves. He's a CEO. And he was quoted as saying, "Insecure leaders surround themselves with yes people, while effective leaders surround themselves with people who challenge them." In other words, leaders who take offense or feel attacked by questions often create toxic work environments, and their teams struggle because of it. So can we agree the CEO job description is daunting? Yes, right? Sounds so. Can we also agree that not everybody can do it? Yes. So what should our board members be looking for? What should they expect? Well, they should want the assurance that the hospital has a solid financial balance sheet. They should want to know physicians have confidence in the organization. I believe there was a no confidence vote taken recently. Steve can talk about. They would want to know patients are receiving excellent care and getting great clinical outcomes. And they want to hear positive stories, not horror stories. They want to know the CEO is being effective in his role. So how do they measure all that? And what do you, the community, expect from us? Access. Access to high-quality care is the key attribute. It shouldn't take 7 or 8 months to get the critical tests and then find out you have a diagnosis that has to be treated. Access to physicians, primary care physicians. I think I see on Facebook every day, hey, looking for a primary care physician, asking Facebook how to do that. Our community should expect to have pride in their hospital, and I believe they do, they always did, and I want to get that back. They should expect that the trustees are on target with the way they monitor things. Bottom line, healthcare organizations should strive to be a better place where patients can receive great care, timely care, where employees can work, and physicians can practice medicine. We all want to have purpose, we all want to do worthwhile work, and we all want to make a difference. You can never underestimate the difference you made and will continue to make. So my original question, what does leadership have to do with culture? Everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for those incredibly relevant insights, and you're spot on in identifying what's lacking in South County Hospital right now. There was a vote of no confidence. She brought that up. It occurred at our last medical staff meeting. It wasn't on the agenda, but it didn't have to be. There was a quorum, and there needed to be. And a vote was taken that I was told by the individual counted or looked at the votes that was not favorable for the CEO. That vote was never released to the medical staff. And the medical staff, when I tried to inspire them to redo the vote, because the administration said it didn't count, only a small fraction of the physicians on the staff were present. Most of the physicians on the staff, if we look at all 400 or 500, are not voting members. But there were key constituents, key senior active members who attended that medical staff meeting, probably the best attended medical staff meeting we've had in a while. So I think their vote was very significant. But, the employed physicians are afraid to talk, they're afraid of retaliation, they need their jobs, and they are fearful that things cannot change. And another vote taken again would not have any different impact. The board knows the results of the vote. The C-suite, third floor, knows the results of the vote, and nothing, they did not move them. The last comments I want to make concern a letter that some of you may know about, and most of you probably don't. Some of you may know that South County Hospital is not the only group voicing their concerns about a system that appears to be squandering opportunities to remain vibrant and to retain and attract healthcare professionals. There's another group comprised of knowledgeable former healthcare leaders at South County Hospital who quietly worked in parallel behind the scenes to achieve similar goals. And this group is comprised of former chairs of the board, former trustees, donors, people who have a lot of healthcare experience at South County, not somewhere remotely. They've spoken to board members individually, behind the scenes, trying to affect change. And earlier this month, they drafted a letter sent to the Board of Trustees, signed by 62 individuals, again comprised of board chairs, trustees, physicians, nurses, donors, and other healthcare leaders, calling for 3 things. 1, rehiring the Cancer Center clinical team. 2, appoint new professional leadership that is replacement of the present CEO. And 3, to pursue a strategic partnership with a larger healthcare entity to safeguard the future of the hospital. This would allow the South County health system to make critical current out-of-reach investments in care to ensure the financial stability, taking advantage of economies of scale that larger systems have to navigate what's become a difficult healthcare reimbursement landscape. What happened after that letter? There was really no response from the board. There was no wavering of support of the CEO. The results of the letter, however, was that 2 members of the board resigned shortly thereafter. Dr. Robert Dyer, dermatologist in the community, and well known by many of you. And Dr. Betty Rambler, RN, PhD, is serving as the interim dean of nursing practice at URI. But the rest of the board apparently continues to support Aaron Robinson, which has been the most perplexing thing that I've confronted in my whole medical career. Since Aaron Robinson became CEO, 6 board members have resigned voluntarily or have been removed by the chairman of the board. This is unprecedented and clearly raises red flags. Unfortunately, significant operational issues persist since we brought this to the public's attention in early September. In short, we are in crisis and immediate action is needed. Again, we need the help of the entire community, as this is a crisis that we've not been able to overcome alone. Finally, I'd like you to be aware that there is another avenue that you may hear more about in the future, and this involves the operators or members of the South County Healthcare Endowment who are considered the owners of a nonprofit corporation. These individuals can be called upon to elect trustees or remove trustees to the parent board and ratify major decisions of the organization. And unfortunately, if we cannot get the attention of the board to step up and resolve some of these issues that we discussed tonight, that may be an option that may need to be looked into. Anyway, I want to introduce our last speaker, and that is Dr. Aaron Weisbord. Dr. Weisbord is a native South County guy. Not everybody's born in South County, but everybody claims to be. He's practiced cardiology in the area for the past 16 years, 5 in private practice when we were South County Hospital, and 11 years as an employee of South County Medical Group of South County Health, which is what our group is now a part of, or was a part of until we joined Marine. He was born and raised in South Kingstown. Prior to attending medical school, he worked as a legislative assistant to who you now know as U.S. Senator Jack Reed. A year ago, Dr. Weisbord left South County Hospital to join the Lifespan Brown Health System. During his time at South County Hospital, he served in a number of leadership and administrative roles, including as president, vice president, and treasurer of the hospital medical staff. He spent 5 years as an ex officio member of the South County Hospital Board of Trustees, and upon completing his presidency, he was asked to rejoin the board as a standing member. His time on the board spanned the tenures of CEOs Luther and Cola and Aaron Robinson, both of whom he worked with closely. Dr. Weisbord gained extensive exposure to the operations and unique culture of South County Hospital through additional roles as co-chair of the Performance Improvement Committee, chair of the Medical Executive Committee, Credentials and Utilization Review Committee, and is member of the Risk Committee and Peer Review Committee. Doesn't sound like he ever made it home. Anyway, I'm honored to introduce Dr. Aaron Weisbord, who closed the meeting. Well, actually, Nan will close the meeting, but he's the last speaker. Thank you personally for your attention.
Thanks everybody for being here. Before I start, I just want to thank you on behalf of all the people who are not here. This is a collaborative effort on part of the people who are sitting up here to organize this grassroots effort, but it really impacts everybody in the community. Anybody who's had a family member or been a patient themselves in the hospital knows the unique care that they received and personalized care that they received, and that's what made South County Hospital so special. It's a unique enough organization that people move to South County specifically because they know a hospital of that nature is close by. I will say that it's been 30 years since I worked in politics, and there's a reason I left, and I'm reluctantly re-engaging here in what is essentially a political endeavor. As I was putting my thoughts together, there were a couple statements that I wanted to read that led me to come back to the stage here and to participate in the group. The first is what does it mean to be a community hospital, and what's the role of a community hospital? And in my mind, that's above all to provide timely, accessible, and personalized medical care that meets each individual's health needs, and visitors in a sustainable way. And based on my experience in the hospital and the leadership and administrative role, there's only one way to accomplish that goal. And the hospital leadership, to do that, must continually engage the community and listen to and collaborate with core constituents, including patients and their families, the medical staff, employees, and community leaders. So why are we here, and where is the hospital leadership fallen short? In my mind, it's really in this area of listening that to these key stakeholders, where in my opinion, the hospital leadership has come up short. And as a result, compromise the covenant with the community that has been historically the foundation of our unique culture of care at South County Hospital. Having worked under Lucian Pola in the prior regime, I want to touch a little bit on that culture of collaboration that I witnessed. Here are some examples of how things used to be done at South County Hospital. For one, we have regular meetings between key administrators and medical staff leaders, nursing leaders and staff, where there was open and honest discussion and exchange of ideas regarding key issues facing the hospital. There was a committee that existed called the DIAC Committee, where we specifically paired physician leaders, nurses, and other clinical leaders, where we met and exchanged, again, ideas on how to maintain excellent and personalized care along our service lines. Neither of those exist anymore, as far as I know. As Steve mentioned, I was a member of the Board of Trustees for 5 years and ex officio as the President and Vice President of the medical staff. And then I was asked to come back to the board after my term ended. And that lasted about 6 months before I was asked to depart the board. Prior to the current leadership, the Board of Trustees chairman encouraged questions and not only tolerated, but encouraged, as I mentioned, discussion and dissent. This leadership style fostered collaboration and was critical to preserving a culture of quality that marks South County Hospital as a true high reliability organization. You've heard that term multiple times. And what that means is everybody from the top to the bottom of the organization is not only allowed but expected to speak up and say when something isn't right. The respect that was shown to employees and the trust former leaders placed in these employees was reciprocated. And this trust engendered and created unparalleled commitment on the part of physicians, nurses, staff, volunteers, and community members to the hospital. South County Hospital was characterized by a true culture of caring. So how did we get here tonight? Based on my experience, the current hospital leadership has deliberately created a top-down, authoritarian culture in which decisions are made without input from staff, and more importantly, in which staff at all levels are hesitant to question leadership for fear of retribution. I'd like to provide a few examples. As Steve mentioned, the chairman of the board has unilaterally purged the board of members who question his decision-making or offer dissenting opinions, as evidenced by the unusually high board turnover in the past several years, including 2 recent resignations from the board. Secondly, the hospital leadership has pushed changes in the medical staff bylaws that made the CEO a sitting member of the medical executive committee. This had the effect of stifling open debate regarding key clinical issues. Thirdly, the hierarchical leadership style has resulted directly and indirectly in changes in medical services that have undermined the well-being of our patients and this community. As we've already mentioned, I'll list them. Departure of the entire oncology department, -1, resulting in compromised care through loss of continuity for patients. Number 2, departure from employment of the majority of primary care physicians in a time of crisis for primary care. Number 3, resignations of the entire cardiology department from South County Hospital employment, resulting in disruptions of care and diminished availability of cardiac services and long wait times. Number 4, as we started out with, elimination without discussion or input from patients, cardiologists, or cardiac rehab staff of the cardiac wellness program. This program was built over decades with community donations and served as a literal lifeline for patients struggling with cardiovascular disease. Hospital leadership has justified many of these changes based on the economic challenges and suboptimal reimbursement, and yet simultaneously made, as you heard, significant expenditures on non-clinical items such as the dramatically increased CEO pay, renovating the executive boardroom, and redesigning and marketing the South County Hospital logo. It seems, therefore, that the dramatic and deleterious physician departures and program cuts at South County result not solely from financial headwinds, but rather principally due to the confrontational and dictatorial style of hospital leadership. We must, as we have as a group and as a community, acknowledge the difficulties of the current financial climate in Rhode Island regarding reimbursement and the need for South County Hospital to partner with a large organization. Nobody disputes this. However, I would ask if the current leadership style and the resultant deterioration in the hospital's relationship with the medical staff and the larger community has made the task of partnering more difficult. I suspect the answer is yes. In conclusion, these are difficult times. The community in South County has historically supported the hospital generously with time, with money, and patronage, and the relationship has been uniquely symbiotic. It is uncharacteristic and uncomfortable for those of us who are longtime supporters of this institution to be taking these unprecedented actions. And yet, I would argue that it is not only right for us to be here tonight, it is our responsibility. We must shine a spotlight on the deficiencies in leadership that has threatened the long-term well-being of our hospital. Now is the time for patients, family members, doctors, nurses, staff, and community members to realign South County Hospital with our community. I'm going to ask a few questions as I conclude. First, what does it mean when we say save our hospital? Why are we here tonight? What are we asking for? I think it's important to realize the emphasis is on the second word, our. It's not just any hospital. It's a hospital where you knew you could bring your family member, where you weren't hesitate to go yourself and receive the kind of care you would if a family member was your nurse or your doctor. It means that we are here, as Dr. Van Hemmer stated, to save the soul of the hospital. The soul of the hospital is created by the people's commitment, dedication, people who walk down the hall and pick up a piece of paper, people who treat your family member as if it were their son or their daughter. That's why we're here. We're here to preserve the personalized care that has characterized the hospital that's under threat. And finally, I would ask you, does it matter? Does it matter that Dr. Mackie Fowler stated, "I'm so glad I left South County Hospital"? Does it matter that Jared Anderson, a generous donor who supported immensely the cardiac rehab program, didn't get a phone call or a letter back from the leadership of the hospital? Does it matter when entire departments pick up and leave the hospital? Ask yourself those questions. If you think you can sustain the same level of personalized care that we've seen before in the face of these changes, I think the answer is yes, they matter. So I would ask that you could please continue to support this organization, support the hospital, support the people who are working there. They're good people. They want to do the right thing. It's hard for them to do it in the current environment, but we need to change that for them. Thank you.
Just some last few closing remarks. It's been said that South County Hospital Committee, that's us, would just fade away, and that our responses, according to the hospital administration, were entirely emotional and emotion logic. Tonight you heard a lot of in-depth information from healthcare professionals on the inside who provided their perspectives. This included factual information and perhaps contradictory information. We hope these insights will encourage you to support us in our work. Excuse me, in any situation when we analyze the root cause, it's very important to ask the right questions of the right people strong position is that the hospital administration and the Board of Trustees have not looked in the mirror carefully enough. This program is presented to you so that you can better understand the full picture. Please contact the Board of Trustees. Their names and contact information are on our website, southcountyhospital.com. Please support our work as a committee with your donations and your help. And what do we do with our donations? Well, sometimes we need some PR help. We have materials. We have places like this where we can have meetings. We have our esteemed fire and police who are here for our safety. And so your donations would help us continue to do this work. Also help us and to support us in our goals. Our goals have never wavered since this committee has started to come together. And those goals are, and you've heard it multiple times tonight, remove the hospital CEO, maintain transparency in operations and financial results, restore the cancer center with a permanent, dedicated staff, and lastly, create a partnership with another healthcare institution to stabilize finances and ensure the delivery of high-quality care for generations to come. And you heard examples of Westerly and the Newport. For sure, it takes time to get those programs going and get those operations going, but now they are successfully serving the needs of the community. This concludes our program, but one thing, we have our legislatures who've been very interested in following us in everything we do. And up there in the nosebleed seats today, we have Teresa Tanzi and Kathy Fogarty. As you know, the legislature has been very busy. It just started in their work. They finished for the day, but they came straight here. And so we invite you, as we said at the beginning, we'll come out into the foyer. And we're happy to meet with you, talk with you one-on-one, hear your questions, hear your stories, and certainly do speak with Teresa and Kathy. We thank you so much for coming and sitting here and listening to all of us. And we wish you a great evening.